So I'm going to talk very, very briefly about my background, then about studying at Eden Project, and about FISC and how that's helped me as well. So briefly, hopefully, prior to 2013, I was in health and social care sector working with people with disabilities and mental health problems. And then I managed projects monitoring service provision in Devon. So I did that for around 20 years. Not very interesting. Following redundancy, my husband and I spent 5 years traveling in Central America and lived on that boat for 18 months. Nothing to do with plants. We had 2 years in Belize, and essentially it was a midlife crisis, really, and we came back with no money. So when we came back to England, we did some voluntary work at a vineyard and an orchard and grew loads of vegetables in a walled garden. And that ignited my passion for plants. And I think a lot of people, certainly on my course that I was on, came into plant science through growing food. So horticulture is an important way in. I did a couple of sessions a couple of years actually, working with doing therapeutic horticulture with people with severe learning disabilities as well, growing food with them. During COVID, I saw a Facebook ad for Eden Project degrees. I had no idea they did degrees there and thought, that sounds good, and amazingly got in. So in 2021, I think it was, I started my plant science degree, horticulture plant science degree. These are some of the, not all, but some of the modules that we covered in that degree. It's, I don't know if anyone's been there, fantastic arena for learning about plants. A small, friendly university campus, which was great for me because I hadn't been in education for 30 years. They've got brand new state-of-the-art labs as well, which is just a massive bonus for science students. And it was everything I was looking for. Chris Bisson, one of the program managers, is actually here today somewhere. There he is. Hello. And he's got some programs and more information about the other degrees as well. But as you can see, it's a really broad base for entering botany. So you can go into any sort of career afterwards, hopefully. I graduated last week as well. Thank you. As my interest in ecology and conservation grew, I was really happy to find out that the National Wildflower Centre is part of the Eden Project. And I spent a month internship with them in 2022. One of my favourite projects was being involved with the Millennium Seed Bank UK Threatened Flora project, where we were tasked with collecting specific seeds around Cornwall for safeguarding in the future. And I was able to practice many of the skills learned at college, including identification and making voucher specimens for their herbarium as well. And this is us collecting, I'm going to say sea knotgrass because I'll trip over the Latin, for them at Carlisle Beach in Cornwall. Grows quite often with raised knotgrass as well, so it's a bit of a tricky one. It was an interesting collection. It took 6 hours in 30 degrees heat, and we had to, when we arrived there to do the assessment, there was an outdoor theatre company setting up right on top of the population. So that was a fun one. In my second year, for my work placement, I was lucky enough to be able to spend 2 weeks at Wakehurst working with the UK Threatened Flora team. And I was able to process the collections we'd made the previous summer. So it's being able to see that whole project through right to the end was really good. So we did cleaning, cut testing, x-rays, all the way into the vault. So that's me following up with the sea knotgrass seeds on the left there. Another highlight was
Hey.
yeah. I didn't know you were going to be here when I did this. Another highlight was representing Eden Project at the Botanical University Challenge contest for 2 years in a row. There's a link there. I'm sure everyone's heard of it here, but if you haven't, even if you're not a student, you can play online via YouTube. It's a really fun competition. It really tests your botanical knowledge, and it's not easy. The first year I was involved, nothing to do with me. I stepped in at the last minute, but we reached the semi-finals. And this year we reached the second round. But it's not about that. It's about taking part. I'm sure Jake would agree with me. They also run the Student Botany Festival, which is just amazing. And it's just a fantastic couple of days of learning and networking, guest lectures, tours. And this is us having a tour with Chris Thorogood at the Oxford Botanical Garden this year. Really brilliant. Get involved. And if you're at uni, get a team together. So on to the FISC. How many people in here have taken a FISC? Ooh, it's not bad. Probably need a few more to sign up then, maybe. As you probably know, it's now led by BSBI. And due to a lack of botanical skills, especially in the ecology sector, it's increasingly being required by consultancies who are asking for at least a level 3, so that they can undertake habitat surveys, particularly for restoration projects and biodiversity net gain. I do want to stress that it's a test, but it isn't a test. It's essentially a lovely day out looking at plants. I had a great time. The date for the one I did came up, it was about a week before my final exams last year. So I didn't do any kind of prep, but I just wanted to gauge where I was on the botanical skills ladder after 3 years of study. Which, if you're not aware of it, there's the botanical skills ladder. I don't know how well you can see that, but it runs from 1 all the way up to 7, 1 being basic ID skills, 7 being outstanding. And I'd love to know if there was an outstanding person here. Too shy. I got a level 3, which really surprised me. It is still provisional. I haven't received my certificate, so hopefully that won't change. But it means I can undertake surveys such as UK HABs, phase 1 or faucet habitat surveys. And I have been using that in my work. This is how it works on the day. You have to identify 10 plants without any books at all, no apps in any of it. So you either know them or you don't. And then 20 plants that you can use keys and books for. All 30 of those plants you need to do in an hour and a half. So it's a bit tight, but doable. Latin or common names are accepted. So that takes quite a lot of the stress out of things. And the final task is a field survey of a chosen habitat local to the venue. And ours was, I found this on the website actually. I was quite surprised that I'm actually in the photo. Ours was a woodland which went all the way up there, steep woodland, and started off with a hedgerow here. So it was a great little habitat actually. And I managed to get around 60 plants, I think. And you get 2 hours to do that. Now, people always say to me, when I've said I've done the FISC, I don't know enough about plants. I don't know enough plants. I'm not ready, or I hate exams. But really, it's not about knowing all the plants. Nobody, I think, knows all the plants. It's about your ability to use the botanical keys. And as long as you if you know sort of vague families is a bit families, it helps you get there quicker. And if you know your anatomy and the descriptions of plants, then using a key gets easier. So the more you practice, the better you'll be. And so I just recommend getting a hand lens and a book and just going out and keying things out. I'm sure you're all geeky enough plant people to actually enjoy that. Better still, join a local botany group and go out with them. And I'm guilty of not doing that enough. I'm sure you'll agree. But that's where you'll learn a lot. So I don't know about how I'm doing for time. So next steps for me. I'm now employed by the National Wildflower Centre at the Eden Project as an apprentice ecologist, and I'm studying for a master's in ecological land restoration, still with Eden Project University Centre. I'm using my degree daily, and the FISC has enabled me to assist with UK HAB surveys and condition assessments for biodiversity net gain projects, something that Eden is exploring as a habitat bank. I've recently been working on a roof garden in Canary Wharf, solar farms, wind farms for habitat creation, and I've led wildflower walks for Eden's wellbeing programme. I support a team of volunteers called the Wildflower Warriors, and this is us sowing our very first batch of wildflower seed that we've been growing for a new road project in Cornwall. The seeds were wild collected from donor sites 4 or 5 years ago. Then we grew them in bulk on our fields, and we've been able to deliver probably around a ton of seeds, I think it is, to revegetate 7 kilometres of verges along the new road. And each mix is bespoke mix based on the conditions. Massive project. We're not doing it all by hand. It will be hydroseeded, the rest of it. So yeah, my interest going forward is about restoring forward. So looking at climate change and how that will affect our habitats. If anyone wants to talk to me about that, I need ideas for my master's project. Quite interested in novel ecosystems as well, and design systems perhaps to cope with future changes. So I think that's me. Thank you for listening. Here's some links to the Wildflower Centre, FISC and Eden Degrees as well. Thank you very much. Yeah, it was actually. Yeah, just from growing food and being out in nature, but mostly from growing food. So it was a horticulture that got me into it, but very quickly realised I didn't want to work in a botanical garden. I don't know why, it just looked really hard work. And got and I was interested in nature and conservation anyway, and plants. Easier to work with than people, dare I say? Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Fantastic. So thanks. So now we have Dr. Kira Chapman, who's going to talk about another BSBI plant ID offer, which is IdentiPlant, which is an online plant ID class now administered